your screen.
Great. So thanks for this chance for us to share our work. And I'm Duncan from Hong Kong. And the other one is my colleague Soyoo, who is from South Korea. And today we are trying to present our systematic review findings on community-based learning. And more specifically, we are trying to examine a construct called student engagement and also another construct called teacher perceived needs support, and in K-12 educational levels. So before we start, we'll talk about the definition first. For community-based learning, in our case or in our reviewing process, we are trying to reverse it to taking the curriculum content and classroom activities outside school or bringing some community people or practice inside the schools, so outside and inside. We also give the definition for STEAM education for here. It's trying to refer to integrating two or more STEAM domains or STEAM content. So for example, if science and mathematics or science and art is fine in our definition. We know that there is some limitation for this definition. Some of the scholars will say that maybe we need all 5 or 4 disciplines together, but for our screening process to including more articles, we are trying to be more flexible and trying to just say 2 and see what we have found in our findings. And let's introduce why community-based based learning is important in STEAM education. Let's start from the real-world problem. So, embedding the real-world problem in STEAM education is becoming a common practice. Because it's kind of like STEAM education cannot really teach in the traditional way. We have a lot of discipline. We can't, like chapter 1 is science, chapter 2 is technology, like that. And that's why the scholars trying to saying that maybe let's use the real world problems as an example as a way to teach. And talking about the real world problems, the selection of real world problems have some concerns, at least 2 considerations. The first one is you need to make sure that the student understand the problem. Let's say for the primary student, I think some of them are quite hard to understand what is auto driving or something at those who know, or maybe drinking alcohol, something like that. And another one should be you need to motivate students to address them. If they are not interested in them, then it's very hard for them to do it. And in order to address these 2 considerations, we are trying to argue that community-based learning can help. And the first is that the student can draw upon their social, historical, and cultural background to make sense of the problem. The problem is still quite complicated, honestly, but at least they have more background on addressing the problem. And another one is interesting problem. Maybe the student can be inspired by their community, or they can see themselves as the agent of change in their community in order to help them to motivate them to learn. Let's talk about the research gap after talking about the importance of community-based learning. Um, the majority of the literature review is focused on the higher education over the past 5 years, the last, yeah. And then the second one is talking about that usually the real world problem, or especially for the community problem, require interdisciplinary solutions. So more study are needed for like STEM education, STEAM education in this kind of problem using as a pedagogy. And the last one is just combine these 2 research gap and also some literature over these last 5 years. We're trying to say that we need to have more research, especially on student engagement in community. So here's 2 research questions that we are trying to address. The first one is how does community-based learning impact student engagement? And then the second one is about how do teachers perceive the effects of community-based learning, lead support. Yeah. Okay, so we talk about a lot of student engagement. We are trying to define it for now. It is defined by the Ralph definition, refer to the extent which students are actively involved in their learning activities. So there are four dimensions: cognitive, emotional, behavioral, and agentic, according to Ralph. There are many definitions of student engagement, and since our title has said that we are trying to use the self-determination theory perspective. So the Ralph, the teachers, and yeah, it's related to SDT in the future. And also the teacher needs support. Another construct that we are trying to examine is defined like a in three basic needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness, which is three key ideas in self-determination theory. Yeah, and here comes the method part after we define everything and introduce the background.
I briefly explain about the methods part. So our study followed the Prisma framework, which provides a systematic and transparent process. And our study was conducted in three phases: article identification, screening and inclusion, and data coding and analysis. So we used four databases: ERIC, Web of Science, ProQuest, and SCOPUS, and keywords such as community-based, service learning, STEAM, and STEM were used, and for the time frame, we used from January 2015 to April 2025. Initial results were 2,156 recalls, but after duplicates removed, 742 remained. And after title abstract screening, manual duplication removal, full text screening, and snowballing, we selected 38 articles in total. And for the data coding and analysis part, for the research question one, the student in terms of student engagement, and for the research question two, which is about the basic psychological needs, we apply the hybrid coding approach, both deductive and inductive, and follow the Braun and Clarke's 6 steps of thematic analysis to ensure reliable results. And full limitations were noted. The first, only 4 databases were chosen to select articles, implying that studies from other databases may have been overlooked as a consequence. And second, different search strings yield different results, potentially missing relevant articles with similar keywords. Third, only peer-reviewed articles written in English were included in this study. Other relevant papers such as books, conference papers, or grey literature were excluded. And lastly, some reviewed articles did not specify the operationalization of community-based learning, which may result in insufficient details in the findings regarding student engagement.
Yeah, and it comes to the result pass. First, we address the first question about student engagement. So there are 34 articles in total talking about student engagement, or we interpret it as student engagement, and 26 of them have reported about cognitive engagement in here. So in total, there are 44 times, and we divide it into 3 sub-themes. The first one is pursuit of STEAM knowledge. The second one is using the self-regulatory strategies, and the last one is use application of the 21st century skills. And we will go through it quickly. So for the first one, the pursuit of STEAM knowledge, the communities provide authentic learning environments for students' STEAM learning, so they can try to learn the STEAM knowledge in their communities. And you can refer these articles. And the second one is self-regulation strategies. So there's only one type of self-regulation strategies reported, which is called planning. So compared to some artificial problem, the students are more likely to plan their project first before they really act. Because in some of the case or in some artificial problem, the student will just say, I want to finish the homework and I do it immediately. But in these 2 articles, they reported that the secondary student in this, they really think clearly before they act. The last one for cognitive engagement is 21st century skills. There are lots of them, and we just find these three are reported in the last past decade. So the problem solving, of course, we are addressing problem, it will be there, and creativity, the student trying to apply their creativity to design some solutions, and collaborative skills is trying to communicate with their students. So that's three sub-constructs in cognitive engagement. And go to the next one, which is emotional engagement. 22 out of 33 articles reported about 50 times. So we divided into these four sub-themes: identity, meaningfulness, interest, and enjoyment. The first one, identity. So the student will understand what STEAM professions, say typo here, and feel confidence in addressing the STEAM problems. Meaningfulness, the student will recognize the value of the STEAM knowledge when they address the community issues, just not like some God-given formula from the world. Is they can really use it in their community and help their community. So the third and the fourth one, I think I can combine it together. Interest and enjoyment is students find that the STEAM knowledge, their activities, and also they are interested in their STEAM career. And students enjoy doing that in some study. Yeah, especially the reason why they enjoy when they learning in community is because they can have some hands-on activity to do with community members or with their students, with different stakeholders, and they really enjoy doing this. The third one will be behavioral engagement. 20 out of 33 articles reported 27 times in total. So there are only two themes we have interpreted. The first one is task involvement, and the second one is task persistence. So task involvement, basically they are involved in two types of tasks. The first one is engineering design, and the second one is science practice. Science practice like testing the hypothesis, analyzing the data. And engineering design is like a loop. You need to receive feedback from your community members, and then you try to refine your prototypes. And the task persistence is they demonstrate the task persistence in community learning activities. I didn't put it down here, but the reason or the proposed reason behind why the students are more likely to persist is because of empathy. This is structural, I think is, let me see, I think it's Kwan. This one is about a structural equation modeling to, to illustrate how empathy is correlated with task persistence. And the last one for the first question is agentic engagement, the last dimension. 10 out of 33 articles reported in total of 15 times. So two themes, idea suggestions and solution enrichment. Idea suggestions is the student will suggest the problem that they want to address and the possible solutions to the problem actively. So this is not just the teacher assign a problem and student solve it. It's the student themselves. They want to solve some problem and they really propose some solutions. And solution enrichment is they are actively engaged with the community members and trying to enrich their solutions. So these two are talking about students are actively, proactively trying to address the problem instead of treating the problem is just like a normal classroom task. That's all for the first question about the student engagement, and we are going to the second question, which is about the teacher. So how teacher really perceive this community-based learning? There are three. The first one is autonomy support. 10 out of 13 selected publications reported in total 13 times. And two themes are here, choice provision and STEAM internalization. So choice provision is Teacher believe that they could offer more instructional options and students could have their own choices when addressing the community problems. And STEAM internalization is talking about that teacher think that the student will internalize STEAM disciplines after involving in communities, not just some abstract stuff. They can try to make it concrete and try to make it meaningful for the STEAM knowledge. And the second one will be the perceived competence support. 6 out of 13 reported in total of 10 times. And the teacher believed that student 21st century skills and their STEAM knowledge can be applied and promoted. So, yeah. And in particular, for the promotion of 21st century skills is problem solving and collaborative skills. And the application of STEAM knowledge just triangulate with the student part is trying to provide a practical learning environment or an authentic learning environment for students to learn and utilize their knowledge. The last one is relatedness support, which again, there are 13 articles and in total, and 6 of them reported teacher received the relatedness support. So basically, it's talking about school and community. Relationship with the school members. Many teachers feel their relationship with their student become more close and they are more willing to collaborate with their student in the community learning activities. And connection with the community, teacher thinks that the students will be more connected. I think it's quite obvious to see that, yeah. Okay, so here will be the last part. We have addressed the first question and the second questions, and we are trying to suggest some future direction in this field of community-based learning and STEM education. The first one is 21st century skills. If you go back to our PowerPoint before, you can find out that there are only three types of 21st century skills are reported. So there are other 20th century skills such as leadership should be reported or should be studied in the future. And also for the self-regulation, the second point, there's only planning studied in the study. And there should be other self-regulatory strategies such as monitoring should be studied, and the balance of classroom lessons and community activities are important. And how to balance between them is a tricky part. For the emotional engagement, we find that future studies should investigate, again, the time spent on the community activities and the classroom learning environment. And the value of the value of student can also be studied in the future. For behavioral engagement, more underlying factors should be studied for the student preference for the learning environment. And in some study, actually, students will face a lot of problems when they're learning in communities. I mean, practical problems in terms of STEAM, such as they don't know how to use the wire and they don't know how to use the electricity stuff, the circuit stuff. But actually, most of the articles are just depict it very in a general way. So we suggest that more details should be reported in the future. So it's kind of like the problem here, and the students certainly solve the problem eventually. But what's inside between the problem and the student thinking process to the solutions? There should be more study or more report, more details should be described. The last one for agentic engagement is more underlying factors should be presented about agentic engagement. And actually, not every student are really active in learning in community. Some of them are quite rejecting to learn in community. So yeah, so there should be more underlying factors should be studied. And in terms of community-based learning, in all the study that we have found, actually, we can say that community is almost equal to community members. So they focus on members only. but there are more than members in community. There are some resources or there is nature in your community. So we suggest that apart from only talking about individuals to individuals, although this is important, we are trying to suggest that you can make use of some other resources, especially in STEAM education. You can do experiment by collecting data from your community. So I think this is a very interesting direction to study in the future.
Sorry to interrupt. You know how much you've been going for 21 minutes, and so I know we have other presenters. Do
Oh,
you know?
sorry about that.
We have 15
Yeah,
minutes each. Are you almost finished?
sorry. And this is the last one.
So we would like to suggest future directions for teacher perceived support. So for the autonomy support, we suggest that future studies should examine how to design and implement autonomy supportive STEM lessons in community settings. And for the competence and relatedness support, future studies should investigate how to design and implement structured STEAM lessons and involved STEAM lessons. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. Sorry for overrunning. And thank you for reminding us.